Hello, Little Woman fans. Welcome to the Little Woman podcast. My today's guest is Annabelle. Annabelle and I met on Tumble a few years back, and we have been chatting about Little Woman ever since. And she really loves Little Men. I really love Little Men too. Little Men is a direct sequel to Little Woman. It takes place about 5 to 6 years after Little Woman. In the end of Little Woman, we found out that Jo and Friedrich got married. Jo and Friedrich got 2 sons, Rob and Ted. Annabelle and I are talking about the chapter 3 in Little Men called Sunday. This is where we are introduced to an orphan boy called Nat, and he becomes one of the center characters in Little Men. One of the best things that has happened to me when doing this podcast is when people who have not read Little Woman before have sent me messages and said that I inspired them to read Little Woman. And sometimes people say that they use this podcast as a reading companion to understand the book better when they are reading the book at the same time. I think that is really cool. One of the reasons why I started this podcast was because I loved Little Woman as a child, and I have read it many times as an adult. But the message the movies give, a lot of the Little Woman research that is out there, is very contradicting. So especially when I was younger, I would have loved to have something like this to help me understand Little Woman. There are also people who have written to me that they had read Little Woman, but listening to this podcast, they got inspired to read Little Man or Jo's Boys. It really warms my heart. Little Men was such a special book to me when I was growing up. Some of you might know this, but my father died when I was very young, and I had a very difficult relationship with my mother for many years. We are in a better place now. I was really struggling as a child and as a young person because I didn't really have a stable parental figures, and I often felt that I had to raise myself. As an adult, when I have spoken to people who have this deep connection with Little Men especially, and with people whose favorite book is Little Man, the same theme comes up every time. You can also hear some of this in this conversation between Annabelle and myself. A lot of people whose parent or parents have not been present in their lives for whatever reason often come to this book because it has almost a nurturing quality in it. We often talk about in this podcast how Jo's character is incredibly maternal. We don't really see that in the movies. It is often erased, but she is really maternal. She loves kids, especially boys, and Laurie and Nat and Dan and all of these lost boys are her children. I have also noticed that these children in Little Man, they take care of each other. Dan looks after Nat and Ted. Tommy looks after Nat. Nat looks after Daisy, etc. Plumfield, it is a children's paradise. And when I read it now, it feels like a beautiful place to grow up. And I love how Friedrich is this empathic teacher who helps these children to reach their true potential. If I would ever meet Louisa May Alcott, I would like to thank her for Little Men and the comfort that the book has given to millions of people. It is not as known as Little Woman, but it should be. It really should be. I know that Louisa wanted a family to herself and to be a mom, and that never happened to her. And in my opinion, at the moment, Little Men is probably the best when it comes to her children's books. I think that is where she had a way to channel that wish that she had to be a mother and to start a school for boys, which is something that she wanted for herself. We can read that from her diary from the time when she was a young adult. And she wrote those desires into Jo's character and how it is to feel like to be alone in this world from a child's perspective and then to be able to have that safe adult who loves you unconditionally. If you have a special connection to a little man, you can write to me and tell me about it. I would love to hear your stories, and I will add my email to the description. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can do that at podcasting Little Woman. Little Woman Podcast has its own merch shop now, and it is really cool, and you can get Amy March's Defense Squad posters to your wall and Not Empty Now mugs where you can enjoy your morning coffee. Coffee always makes me think of that moment in Little Woman when Jo says to Hannah, "Remember to serve coffee because Professor Bear doesn't like tea." Jo's love language is really making coffee. There's also this very flirtatious conversation over coffee between Jo and Fritz in Little Man. Okay, that was enough spoilers for now. You can find all the merchandise at society6.com/Little Woman Podcast. This is Little Woman Podcast, entering to Little Men. Jo and Friedrich and Tender Parenthood. Welcome to Little Woman Podcast, everybody. I'm here today with Annabelle. Would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell a little bit about your relationship with Little Woman?
Of course. I'm Annabelle. I'm a 26-year-old college student. I was actually introduced to books through the 1994 film, which is classic.
Yes.
And I've also seen the anime adaptations from Nippon Animation. I believe only the first anime adaptation was dubbed. It's on Tubi if you want to watch it.
I think the animes are pretty loyal, many of them, which is a nice thing. Today we are going to talk about Little Men, not about Little Woman. Little Men, it takes place, I think, maybe 5 years after the events in Little Woman. Jo is like 35 and Friedrich is in his 50s. Would you like to talk about your relationship with Little Men, specifically?
Oh, sure. I remember I actually didn't read Little Men until middle school, but I did like it. Like, I did not exactly have the most stable home life, so I found a lot of comfort in reading Little Men, and just because I just really loved reading it, because it made me feel like seen. Because, okay, I know it was a home for boys and I'm a girl, but I just always felt safe reading it.
Little Man, it has this ability, sort of, I think I would call it like a comfort book. Like, to me it's on the same category as first Anne of Green Gables books and some other books that are like really cozy and you get this warm feeling when you read it. And I think I told you earlier that there was this one lady who sent me a message some years ago who said that they didn't really have stable parental figures either. So when they read Little Man as a child, in a way, she saw Jo and Friedrich as her parents, or that these two characters were the ones who raised her. It is actually quite a beautiful thing and shows how powerful these books can be.
Kind of a shame that this and Jo's voice gets ignored. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like the first book, but like it would be nice if this and Jo's voice got adapted into other mediums as well.
Yes, and it's a shame because a lot of people don't even know that Little Woman has sequels. It has 2 sequels and they are both pretty awesome. Today we are going to read and analyze chapter 3 of Little Man. It's called Sunday. What can we tell about the main characters in Little Man? What happens in Little Man? I'd say the main character of Little Man is an orphan boy called Nat. And Little Man is like a story of him coming to live with the bears in Plumfield and finding a home there.
Yeah.
And other characters are Dan, who is sort of Joe's favorite wild boy, and then Joe's and Friedrich's two sons, Ted and Rob, and then there's Daisy and Demi, and they are John's and Meg's children. So there are lots of child characters in Little Men, but I'd say that Nat is the main character. What do you think?
I kind of viewed it as more of an ensemble than having one specific main character. The first chapter is when he actually gets there.
Yeah.
It's the Plumfield.
I think there are a couple of chapters which are kind of from Dan's point of view as well. And then there's one that is on Nan's point of view when Rob goes missing. Now I'm just getting ahead here. It does have many nice characters. Nat is this artistic boy and he likes music and he's very much similar to Laurie. He's a bit shy and awkward in the beginning and more of a thinker, dreamer. And then he becomes very fond of Meg's daughter, Daisy, later in the novel.
They're so cute together.
Oh, they're adorable. I was shipping them so hard when I was a teenager. Jo and Friedrich in this book, I don't have words for it. It's amazing.
They're also adorable.
They're so freaking adorable in Little Men. So if we just read some paragraphs and then analyze them as we go.
Sure.
All right. Little Men, Chapter 3, Sunday. The moment the bell rang next morning, Nat flew out of his bed and dressed himself with a great satisfaction in the suit of clothes he found on the chair. They were not new, being half-worn garments of one of the well-to-do boys, but Mrs. Bear kept all such cast of feathers for the picked robins who strayed into her nest. They were hardly on when Tommy appeared in high state of clean color and escorted Nat down to breakfast. Tommy Banks is another character in Little Men. I'd say he's also like a Laurie type of character in that sense that Tommy is a prankster and always gets into trouble.
Yeah.
And Tommy and Nat become good friends in this book.
The sun was shining into the dining room on the well-spread table, and the flock of hungry, hearty lads who gathered around it. Nat observed that they were much more orderly than they had been the night before, and everyone stood silently behind his chair while little Rob, standing beside his father at the head of the table, folded his hands, reverently bent his curly head, and softly repeated a short grace in the devout German fashion, which Mr. Bear loved and taught his little son to honor. Then they all sat down to enjoy the Sunday morning breakfast of coffee, steak, and baked potatoes, instead of the bread and milk fare which usually satisfied their young appetites. There was much pleasant talk while the knives and forks rattled briskly, for certain Sunday lessons were to be learned, the Sunday walk settled, and plans for the week discussed. As he listened, Nat thought it seemed as if this day must be a very pleasant one, for he loved quiet, and there was a cheerful sort of hush over everything that pleased him very much, because, in spite of his rough life, the boy possessed sensitive nerves which belonged to a music-loving nature.
I wonder why they're having special breakfast, and maybe it's because it is Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I do like that Friedrich and Jo are teaching their boys these German customs, because Louis and I love Germany, as we know.
I just think it's a nice detail, because, also I'm kind of worried, I'm a little worried about the kids drinking coffee, though, because, they're a little wound up enough as it is.
In Little Women, there are these scenes where Jo is always like, "Oh, Mr. Bear doesn't like tea. Let's make him coffee." Maybe coffee is for Friedrich and Jo. Maybe not for the kids. Maybe for the older ones.
It's still nice. It kind of reminds me of, when my dad would make, special, because he would make French toast on Sundays. With, and don't think we had powdered sugar, but it was still really good.
That sounds good. Now, my lads, get your morning jobs done and let me find you ready for church when the bus comes around, said Father Bear, and set the example by going into the schoolroom to get books ready for the morrow. Everyone scattered to his or her task, for each had some little daily duty and was expected to perform it faithfully. Some brought wood and water, brushed the steps, or ran errands for Mr. Bear. Others fed the pet animals and did chores around the barn with Franz. Franz is Friedrich's oldest nephew. Daisy washed the cups and Demi wiped them, for the twins liked to work together, and Demi had been taught to make himself useful in the little house at home. Even baby Teddy had his small job to do, and trotted and to fro, putting napkins away and pushing chairs into their places. For half an hour the lads buzzed about like a hive of bees. Then the bus drove round, Father Bear and Franz, with the 8 older boys piled in, and away they went for a 3-mile drive to church in town. I do like the way Louisa May Alcott writes about children, and I don't think you can read this book and think that she hated children.
No, I never got that impression from her.
I don't know if I want to have kids, but I always get like a baby fever when I read about how Friedrich is taking care of his children and Jo is playing with them. It's weird, but it's true.
It's okay, I feel the same.
Even baby Teddy had his small job to do and trotted fro and fro. That's the cutest thing ever. I think he's like a 1-year-old and Rob is 3 or 4 in this book.
He's doing his best. Yeah. Also, I like the little detail that says like that Demi was taught to make himself useful in the little house at home. I like the fact that chores aren't explicitly cleaning and stuff isn't exactly seen as women's work, for lack of a better word. Because, like, learning how to take care of yourself, it's like an everybody thing. At least that's what my dad said. Like, because my brother and I, like, we can do, like, our own laundry. And there's some men that can't take care of themselves, like, cleaning and stuff, because you have to maintain a certain environment to be livable and stuff.
Here in Finland we have this expression, uusavuton. It's like a 20-something or 30-something adult person who doesn't know how to cook or clean, do like basic stuff like that. Laurie actually is like that. I think he knows how to do stuff, but he doesn't. And that's why they call him Lazy Laurie, but also because Laurie had servants, he didn't really have to do things for himself.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I remember, like, Marmee also, like, when the Marches were still rich, like, she got bored, so she learned how to do stuff in the kitchen.
Because Jo and Friedrich, they both grew up in, I'd say Friedrich grew up in like a maybe poor or a middle class family, and Jo grew up in a very poor household. They both had to learn to become self-reliant, and that is what they are going to teach in their school for these children.
That's good.
Yes. Still today very relevant after 150 years later.
Yeah. Because, like, I'm going to say, like, a lot of people just aren't self-reliant because of, I don't know, stuff.
There are many reasons for that. It would be beneficial to be more self-reliant, of course. Because of the troublesome Koch, Nat preferred to stay at home with the 4 small boys and spent a happy morning in Mrs. Bear's room, listening to the stories she read them, learning the hymns she taught them, and then quietly employing himself pasting pictures into an old ledger. "This is my Sunday closet," she said, showing him shelves filled with picture books, paint boxes, architectural blocks, little diaries and materials for letter writing. I want my boys to love Sunday, to find it a peaceful, pleasant day, when they can rest from common study and play, yet enjoy quiet pleasures, and learn in simple ways lessons more important than any taught in school. Do you understand me? She asked, watching Nat's attentive face. You mean to be good? He said, after hesitating a minute. This is really nice because when this book was written, up until to that point, in the 19th century, people started to pay more attention to childhood and importance of playing and stuff like that. Like before that, there really wasn't like a separate world between adults and the children.
Yeah. I mean, there were dolls, obviously, but like, they were just seen as mini adults.
Jo definitely understands sort of early pedagogics of childhood play. But it does really reminds me of the time when Jo is in New York in Little Woman, and then she sees Friedrich playing with Tina and the other girls in the boarding house. It is something that she loves to do as well.
Yeah, it was so cute.
It's one of my favorite scenes in Little Woman.
I think it doesn't really get adapted too much.
No, not really. I think the best version where they adapt like Friedrich playing with the kids and Jo thinking it's adorable, it's the 2017 series. That had a pretty good scene, and he also plays with the kids in the 1994 film.
Yeah, I remember that. It was so cute.
Yeah. And then in the 1949 film, we need to go a bit further, then we find those playing scenes. But it's such an important part of Jo's and Friedrich's relationship that they both like to be parents, they both love children. That's why they start the school together. Or it is Jo's idea originally, but Friedrich just goes along with it.
He supports his wife.
Yeah.
To be good and to love to be good. It is hard work sometimes, I know very well, but we all help one another, and so we get on. This is one of the ways in which I try to help my boys. And she took down a thick book, which seemed half full of writing, and opened at a page where there was one word at the top. Why, that's my name, cried Nat, looking both surprised and interested. Yes, I have a page for each boy. I keep a little account of how he gets on through the week, and Sunday night I show him the record. If it is bad, I am sorry and disappointed. If it is good, I am glad and proud. But whichever it is, the boys know I want to help them, and they try to do their best for love of me and Father Bear.
She has a record system.
Yeah, I think that part would have made me a little bit nervous, but I mean, like, it's because like she wouldn't want to, like, relatively non-judgmental in a way, because she's just like, I want to help them.
Yeah.
I want to help, even if they're bad, I want to help them.
I don't think Jo's feedback would be that terrible, even if she was disappointed.
Still, I would have been so nervous.
Yeah, when you come there for the first time, then definitely. I do feel for Nat. I had a big crush on him when I was a child and read this book for the first time.
Yeah, he is pretty adorable, not gonna lie.
Yeah. And he can play music for you and stuff. I should think they would, said Nat, catching a glimpse of Tommy's name opposite his own and wondering what was written under it. Mrs. Bear saw his eye on the words and shook her head, saying as she turned a leaf, No, I don't show my records to any but the one to whom each belongs. I call this my conscience book, and only you and I will ever know what is to be written on the page below your name. Whether you will be pleased or ashamed to read it next Sunday depends on yourself. I think it will be a good report, at any rate. I shall try to make things easy for you, in this new place and shall be quite content. If you keep our few rules, live happily with the boys and learn something. That's a really nice way to say it.
Yeah.
What I understood, Jo didn't want to be a teacher because she doesn't have patience for that, but she definitely has patience to raise these boys, which I think it's much more demanding than being a teacher.
I think she's getting along okay, though.
I'll try, ma'am. And Nat's thin face flushed up with the earnestness of his desire to make Mrs. Bear glad and proud, not sorry and disappointed. It must be a great deal of trouble to write about so many, he added, as she shut her book with an encouraging pat on the shoulder. Not to me, for I really don't know which I like the best, writing or boys, she said, laughing, to see Nat stare with astonishment at the last item. Yes, I know many people think boys are a nuisance, but that is because they don't understand them. I do, and I never saw the boy yet whom I could not get on capitally with after I had once found the soft spot in his heart. Bless me, I couldn't get on at all without my flock of dear noisy naughty harum-scarum little lads, could I, my Teddy? And Mrs. Bear hugged the young rogue just in time to save the big inkstand from going into his pocket. Oh, little Teddy is the cutest.
I know. I also find it interesting, like she mentioned, I don't know which I like best, writing or boys. I think a lot of people think that Jo gave up writing, but, she didn't. She can't be writing all the time with all the boys around, but she still writes.
Yes. I think it was Greta Gerwig who said that Friedrich forces Jo to stop writing and start a school. She didn't read the book.
Or just watch the movie adaptations.
Maybe. I don't know. Because in Little Woman, Jo says that even before I met my Fritz, I had desired to start a school for poor boys. So it was all Jo's idea. And it gets even better because in one of her diaries, Louisa May Alcott writes that when she is an adult and when she has bits of money, she would like to start an orphan house for boys. And she wrote that when she was in her 20s. There we definitely see these biographical elements in Little Men.
And I wonder if she would have opened it, I wonder if it would have been, similarly run to Plumfield.
I think
she... That would be serious.
Yeah, it is an interesting idea. I know she supported lots of orphans and orphan houses when she became rich thanks to Little Woman. I think it's something that she would have liked to do if she had a partner like Friedrich.
Yeah.
I got the impression that she was sort of wishing that Henry David Thoreau would be her Friedrich and then they would run this kind of school together. But now we have Little Men, at least.
Nat, who had never heard anything like this before, really did not know whether Mother Bear was a trifle crazy or the most delightful woman he'd ever met. He rather inclined to the latter opinion, in spite of her peculiar taste, for she had a way of filling up a fellow's plate before he asked, laughing at his jokes, gently tweaking him by the ear, or clapping him on the shoulder, and Nat found that very engaging. Now I think you would like to go to the schoolroom and practice some of the hymns we are to sing tonight, she said, brightly guessing the thing of all others that he wanted to do. Alone with the beloved of violin in the music book propped up before him in the sunny window, while spring beauty filled the world outside, and Sabbath silence regained within. Nat enjoyed an hour or two of genuine happiness, learning the sweet old tunes and forgetting the hard past in the cheerful present. Aww. That's so cute.
Yeah. I wonder what happened to his violin and to his parents.
I think his dad died, and I believe that the guy who his dad was working with just took his violin.
Something like that happened to him.
I didn't know what happened to his mom.
Yeah.
But she probably died when he was really young.
And this was a time when there wasn't any kind of social secure system. You wouldn't put him to like a foster home or orphanage.
Yeah, they didn't exactly have that. I mean, they had orphanages, but they weren't exactly the most welcoming or friendly. Or I mean, I have no doubt that plenty of orphanages were doing their best.
Yeah, it was a pretty different world. Yeah, I actually read this. I don't remember if I sent it to you, this study about Louisa May Alcott's religious views. And there it says that Jo doesn't go to church like all the other members of the family. But still, Jo is a very religious person.
Yeah.
I think she sometimes goes to church, but not on this particular Sunday.
Maybe she didn't want to leave. No, maybe she just chose not to this Sunday because Nad is still kind of sick. She didn't just want to leave him behind.
When the churchgoers came back and dinner was over, everyone wrote letters home, said their Sunday lessons, and talked quietly to one another, sitting here and there about the house. At 3 o'clock the entire family turned out to walk, for all the active young bodies must have exercise. And in these walks the active young minds were taught to see and love the providence of God in the beautiful miracles which nature was working before their eyes. Mr. Bear always went with them in his simple fatherly way, found for his flock sermons in stones, books in the running brooks, and good in everything. This is like straight from transcendentalist teachings.
Yeah, that is definitely a very thorough thing to say.
I remember reading Little Man some years ago, at the same time when I was doing this research about Henry David Thoreau, and then I was like, okay, this thing that Friedrich says here is said by Henry in this and this book, and in this and this letter.
Like, if he was just made up so that you could publish the sequel, so that way you could publish Little Women, the second half of Little Women, then why is he given, like, such a concrete personality? Because, like, if he was just made up at the last minute, like, why is he just referencing Thoreau and stuff? Or, like, at the forefront of the books in general. Like, I read one comment that said if Alcott really wanted to, she could have just put him in the background or killed him off, but no, he's right there.
The way I think about it is that Louisa May Alcott planned Jo's relationship and marriage way before she even wrote Little Woman. And then we can see that because Henry appears in literal disguises in pretty much all of her novels as a love interest. Friedrich is not an exception to that. He's just one, like a literal reincarnation of Henry David Thoreau. And Jo loves him because Louisa May Alcott loved Henry David Thoreau. It's actually a pretty simple pattern when you think about it, because then we have Laurie, and he's based on this other man in Louisa May Alcott's life who she did not eventually had these deep feelings that she had for Henry. I think people just don't want to see that because they don't think that Friedrich is handsome, and it's a really shallow reason. I think they kind of miss the whole point of Jo's and Friedrich's relationship when they go to that route that Jo should have been with Laurie because Laurie was rich and handsome.
They're too similar. They would have fought all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not like divorce was a thing back then. I mean, it probably was, but it was like way more stigmatized than it is now.
Laurie didn't really want Jo to become a writer, or at least like when he proposed. And then I think when Friedrich proposed to Jo, Jo says that she couldn't stand a rich husband. Jo really had good and valid reasons to say no to Laurie. But Amy was better for Laurie anyway.
Yeah, besides Amy keeps him in check.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously their relationship is much more than that, but still.
It's one of the reasons why I think Laurie actually fell for Amy, because Amy was able to bring out the best side of him, and Jo brought out the worst. But, like we have discussed, that is not in the movies usually. It's a shame.
Yeah. Still not watching the 2019 film out of principle. At first it was just because I couldn't stand them because I heard about the costumes and I have an irrational hatred of Meryl Streep, but now with all the stuff that I'm hearing about it, I just refuse to watch it on principle.
My sister had watched it yesterday for the first time, and I was like, you know what I think about it, and I have this podcast. We talk about Little Woman a lot, and my sister, she has only seen the 1994 film and 1978 series. She hasn't read the book. But then she was like, I watched this new film, and all the time I was thinking how I miss Winona Ryder as Jo.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I was surprised that she got so angry when she watched it. It couldn't have all been my influence, even though she knows that I don't really like that version. But she thought it was very poor telling of the story because she couldn't follow it because it has this weird triple-double timeline going on. It's very confusing. But anyway, I don't think Gerwig has even read Little Woman.
I think she just read a basic summary online or something. Mrs. Bear and with Daisy and her own two boys drove into town to pay the weekly visit to Grandma, which was busy Mother Bear's one holiday and greatest pleasure. Nat was not strong enough for the long walk and asked to stay home with Tommy, but kindly offered to do the honors of Plumfield. You've seen the house, so come out and have a look at the garden and the barn and menagerie, said Tommy, when they were left alone with Asia, to see that as they didn't get into mischief. For though Tommy was one of the best meaning boys who ever adored knickerbockers, accidents were the most direful nature were always happening to him. No one could exactly tell how. What is your menagerie? Asked Nat as they trot along the drive that encircled the house. We all have pets, you see. We keep them in the corn barn and call it the menagerie. There you are. Isn't my guinea pig a beauty? And Tommy proudly presented one of the ugliest specimens of that pleasing animal that Nat ever saw. I know a boy with a dozen of them, and he said he'd give me one, only I hadn't a place to keep it, so I couldn't have it. It was white with black spots, a regular rouser, and maybe I could get it for you if you like, said Nat, feeling it would be a delicate return for Tommy's attentions. I feel Tommy's biased with his pets. I think my dog is just like a typical Chiweenie, and I'm just like, he is the most handsome boy in the world, and he's just there. I understand Tommy's bias.
We are all biased when it comes to our pets.
Relatable.
I do like that they have so many animals in this farm.
Yeah.
And Asia is, but I think Asia is actually a black woman.
She is in the anime adaptation, I know that at least.
Yeah. I don't remember if they mentioned that she was a black person in the book, but I always assumed that she was.
She just doesn't want them to do anything. Because Tommy totally would.
Totally. Yeah, Tommy was that kind of person. Something exciting always happened to him. He was also one of my favorites when I was a child and read this book. I'd like it ever so much and I'll give you this one, and they can live together if they don't fight. Those white mice are Rob's. Franz gave them to him. The rabbits are Ned's, and the bantams outside are Stuffy's. That box thing is Demi's turtle tank, only he hasn't begun to get them yet. Last year he had 62 rackers, some of them. He stamped one of them with his name and the year and let it go, and he says maybe he'll find it ever so long after and know it. He read about the turtle being found that had a mark on it that showed it must be hundreds of years old. Demi is such a funny chap. Yeah, I think Demi actually became like a newspaper man. But I always thought he could have been a good biologist or historian or something very academic.
He's a good kid.
Yeah.
He means well.
What is in this box? Asked Nat, stopping before a large deep one half full of earth. That is Jack Ford's worm shop. He digs heaps of them and keeps them here, and when we want any to go fishing with, we buy some of him. It saves lots of trouble, only he charges too much for them. Why, last time we traded I had to pay 2 cents a dozen and then got little ones. Jack is mean sometimes, and I told him I'd dig for myself if he didn't lower his prices. Now I own 2 hens. Those grey ones with top knots, first-rate ones they are too, and I sell Mrs. Bear the eggs. But I never ask her more than 25 cents a dozen. Never. I'd be ashamed to do it, cried Tommy, with a glance of scorn at the worm shop.
Good to know price gouging was still a thing in the 1880s?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think it's actually cool, like, that they buy, like, eggs and stuff from the kids, and they have, like, little pocket money. Not sure what they do with the pocket money. Probably like buy little treats and stuff for themselves.
Yeah.
It's still nice that they do it though.
That is true. I think they want to also teach them that, money doesn't grow on trees. And these boys, most of them are from poor families.
Who owns the dogs? Asked Nat, much interested in the commercial transactions, and feeling that T. Bangs was a man whom it would be a privilege and a pleasure to patronize. The big dog is Emile. His name is Christopher Columbus. Mrs. Bear named him because she likes to say Christopher Columbus, and no one minds it if she means the dog, answered Tommy, in the tone of a showman displaying his menagerie. The white pup is Rob, and the yellow one is Teddy. A man was going to drown them in our pond, and Pa Bear wouldn't let him. They do well enough for little chaps, and I don't think much of them myself. Their names are Castor and Pollux. Who drowns puppies in a pond? Who does that?
It's not allowed. Don't do that. But Friedrich saved the puppies. Friedrich is a puppy saver. This should be adapted. There should be a whole movie called Friedrich is a puppy saver.
Oh, yeah.
I can be the producer. But I love that so much. He would save the puppies and then he would give them to his family. And they all got their own puppy. And that's also really funny that Jo even has a dog called Christopher Columbus.
He says that a lot.
Because that is like Jo's phrase. Because she's a girl. She wasn't supposed to curse when she was growing up. So she came up with her own fake curse word. And that was Christopher Columbus.
Probably.
But also because Jo's father was a priest. You can't curse if you're a daughter of a priest.
Yeah, at least with yelling Christopher Columbus, people are just going to think you're a little quirky. It's like being, you swore. I mean, the March family is already a little quirky, but just a little.
I don't think Jo as a person would like to curse or use very vulgar language. She's too proper for that. She wants to express herself, but she has to come up with her own language for that. It's a very Jo thing to do. It's funny, the dogs' names are Castor and Pollux. Those are from twins in Greek mythology.
I wouldn't have known that, actually.
I wonder if this has something to do with in Joe's Boys. Jo and Friedrich, they do play, and Friedrich is like a Jupiter and Joe is Juno, so it has like a reference to Roman mythology. I wonder if these are like names from some opera piece or something.
I don't know.
It's possible. Maybe from Shakespeare. This has some kind of literal connotation that we are now thinking. Thank you so much for listening. Annabelle and I continue our chat next time. Take care and make good choices. Bye.